My name is Madeline, and at 35, I find myself in the challenging position of trying to blend two families together. I have a 12-year-old daughter named Sophia and an 11-year-old stepdaughter named Zoe. Last weekend, I made what might be the hardest parenting decision of my life at their shared birthday party, when my relatives only brought presents for Sophia and completely ignored Zoe. I ended up taking some of Sophia's gifts and giving them to my stepdaughter. Now I feel torn between the two girls I love. Before I get into what happened that day, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever faced tough parenting decisions in a blended family. My story begins about 3 years ago when my first marriage ended. James and I had been together for 10 years, building what I thought was a stable life for our daughter Sophia. The divorce wasn't particularly dramatic by most standards, just the slow death of love between two people who had grown apart. We agreed to share custody of Sophia, with her spending weekdays with me and weekends with James. Though the separation was amicable, it left me feeling adrift, trying to redefine who I was outside of being a wife. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I joined a grief support group at the community center. Not for my marriage, but for my father, who had passed away the year before. That's where I met Robert. He was there processing the loss of his wife Lisa, who had succumbed to cancer after a 2-year battle. The first time I saw him, he looked completely broken. His shoulders hunched forward as if carrying an invisible weight, his eyes reflecting a pain I recognized. He was raising their daughter Zoe, who was 8 at the time, all by himself. There's something uniquely bonding about shared grief. Our conversations after group sessions started as just a few minutes in the parking lot, then extended to coffee at the diner across the street. Robert talked about Lisa with such tenderness, about how she had prepared Zoe for her absence by recording videos and writing letters. I shared stories about my father, his booming laugh and unwavering support. We found comfort in each other's understanding. Our relationship progressed quickly, perhaps too quickly in retrospect. Within 8 months, we were married in a small ceremony with just the girls and a few close friends present. We were so caught up in the hope and excitement of our new beginning that we perhaps underestimated the adjustment this would require from our daughters. At first, Sophia seemed to welcome Robert. She had always been an outgoing child, quick to make friends and adaptable to new situations. She appreciated his dad jokes and the way he would help with her science projects, bringing an engineer's precision to building model volcanoes and solar system displays. But as months passed and the reality of sharing her home and her mother permanently set in her attitude began to change. Small comments turned into eye rolls, which evolved into full-blown arguments and door slamming. Zoe's adjustment was difficult in a different way. Unlike Sophia, she was naturally reserved and cautious around new people. Her grief for her mother was still raw, manifesting in quiet tears at bedtime and clutching one of Lisa's old sweaters while she slept. She was polite to me, always saying please and thank you, but there was a wall between us that I couldn't seem to breach. When I would try to brush her hair or help with homework, the way I did with Sophia, she would stiffen, then carefully explain that her mum used to do it differently. My own family added another layer of complexity to our blended household. My mother and 2 siblings never fully warmed to Robert and Zoe. They weren't overtly hostile, but there was a distinct coolness in their interactions. My mother would ask about Sophia's activities in great detail, but offer only perfunctory questions to Zoe. My brother would bring small gifts for Sophia when visiting, but come empty-handed for Zoe. These might seem like small slights, but they accumulated over time, each one a paper cut to the fragile bonds we were trying to form. Robert's family situation was quite different. His parents had passed away years ago, and his only sister lived 3 states away in Colorado. She made efforts to stay in Zoe's life, with regular video calls and care packages, but her physical presence was limited to once or twice a year visits. So when both girls' birthdays approached this year, I saw an opportunity. Sophia would be turning 12 on May 10th, and Zoe would turn 11 on May 24th. A joint celebration seemed perfect, a chance to truly unite our families with a shared happy occasion. I imagined the girls bonding over party planning, my family finally seeing Zoe as part of our family, and everyone coming together in celebration. In retrospect, my expectations were not just unrealistic, but indicative of how desperate I was to force harmony into our blended family. As I pitched the idea of a shared birthday party to Robert, his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. He agreed it made practical sense, but gently suggested we should check with the girls first. When we presented the idea at dinner that night, Sophia immediately dominated the conversation with theme suggestions and friend lists, while Zoe nodded silently beside her. I mistook her silence for agreement, not recognizing the resignation behind her quiet acceptance. This pattern of missing what was right in front of me would continue right up to the disastrous party day. The weeks before the birthday party became a whirlwind of planning and preparation. I threw myself into creating what I believed would be the perfect celebration for both girls, convinced that if I just worked hard enough, I could manufacture the family harmony I so desperately wanted. I created elaborate Pinterest boards with themes that might appeal to both girls, eventually settling on a favorite things party where each girl could showcase her individual interests while sharing the spotlight. Sophia, always vocal about her preferences, gave me detailed instructions. She wanted a chocolate cake with raspberry-filling fairy lights strung across the backyard games that involved music and dancing, and a specific list of 15 friends she wanted to invite. Her enthusiasm was infectious, her blue eyes sparkling as she described her vision for the perfect day. I noted each request, determined to fulfill them all. When I asked Zoe for her input, her response was markedly different. She sat at the kitchen table, twisting a strand of her dark hair around one finger, and said simply, "Whatever Sophia wants is fine." I pushed a little, asking about her favorite cake flavor or activities. She eventually mentioned that she liked vanilla cake and would enjoy some art activities. After some gentle prompting, she gave me the names of just 3 friends she would like to invite. Her subdued response concerned me, but I rationalized it as just her naturally quiet personality. Shopping for their gifts became another exercise in attempted fairness. I meticulously selected presents of equal value and significance for each girl. For Sophia, I bought the latest smartphone she had been begging for, along with accessories and cases. For Zoe, who loved art, I purchased a professional drawing tablet she had mentioned once in passing, along with high-quality coloured pencils and sketchbooks. Robert and I spent an entire evening wrapping the gifts with different papers, creating 2 distinct piles that were visually equivalent in size and presentation. I also made a point to call each of my family members, emphasizing that this was a dual celebration and that they should bring gifts for both girls. My mother sounded distracted on the phone, saying, of course," when I mentioned bringing something for Zoe. My sister Amanda asked pointed questions about what Zoe might want, but in a tone that suggested obligation rather than genuine interest. My brother Tyler simply said he would take care of it, which should have been my first warning sign given his history of forgetting important dates. As the party approached, the dynamics between the girls became increasingly pronounced. Sophia's excitement manifested as a growing sense of entitlement. She began referring to it as my party rather than our party, and spent hours on the phone with friends discussing what gifts she hoped to receive. She created a detailed birthday wish list and made sure everyone in the family had access to it. Zoe, meanwhile, grew quieter and more withdrawn. I would catch her watching Sophia's exuberance with an unreadable expression. One evening, I found her sitting alone on the porch swing, staring out at nothing in particular. When I sat beside her and asked what was wrong, she smiled that small, contained smile of hers and said, "I'm just thinking about Mom. She always made my birthdays special." The comment hit me like a physical blow, a reminder that no matter how hard I tried, I was not Lisa, and this day would always carry that painful absence for Zoe. Robert had his own concerns about the upcoming celebration. One night, after the girls had gone to bed, he broached the subject as we were getting ready for sleep. "I'm worried about how your family will treat Zoe at this party," he said quietly, folding his clothes with precise movements, a habit I had come to recognize as his way of managing anxiety. "They'll be fine," I assured him, perhaps too quickly. "I've talked to all of them about bringing gifts for both girls." Robert sat on the edge of the bed, his shoulders tense. "It's not just about the gifts, Madeline. It's the way they look past her, the way they always direct their questions and attention to Sophia. Zoe notices even if she doesn't say anything. They're still adjusting," I said, though even to my own ears, the excuse sounded thin after 2 years. "This party will help them see Zoe as part of the family." Robert didn't argue further, but the doubt in his eyes stayed with me as I fell into a restless sleep. The night before the party, I stayed up until 2 a.m. decorating the house. I created 2 distinct spaces each reflecting one girl's preferences. Sophia's side of the living room featured bold colours, pop music references, and photos from her dance recitals and soccer games. Zoe's side was more subdued with soft greens and blues art quotes and framed sketches she had done. Looking at the 2 areas side by side, the contrast between the girls' personalities was stark, making me question for the first time whether forcing them to share the celebration was the right decision. The morning of the party arrived with perfect spring weather. as if the universe was offering at least this small blessing. Sophia bounced out of bed at 7, already talking a mile a minute about the day ahead. She tried on 3 different outfits before settling on a new blue dress that matched her eyes, then spent an hour carefully styling her blonde hair. Her energy filled the house both infectious and overwhelming. Zoe emerged from her room later already dressed in a simple green sundress, her dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She offered to help with the last-minute preparations, setting out plates and cups with careful precision. When I told her she looked beautiful, she thanked me politely, but I noticed how her eyes kept darting to the front window, watching for the first guests with visible apprehension. As I made last-minute adjustments to decorations and food arrangements, I felt my own anxiety mounting. So much was riding on this day going perfectly. I had built it up in my mind as the solution to our family integration problems, placing an impossible burden on a children's birthday party. Deep down, I must have known it was too much pressure, but I pushed those doubts aside and plastered on my brightest smile as the doorbell rang, announcing the first arrivals. The party began at noon, with guests arriving in a steady stream bearing colourfully wrapped packages. I greeted everyone with forced cheer, watching like a hawk for how they interacted with each girl. Sophia was in her element, flitting from friend to friend, laughing and chattering excitedly. Zoe stood near Robert, smiling politely as she was introduced to Sophia's friends and my extended family, many of whom she was meeting for the first time, despite our families being blended for nearly 2 years. The backyard games I had planned started off well. We had sack races, a water balloon toss, and a scavenger hunt, with clues hidden throughout the yard. Sophia dominated these activities naturally, taking the lead and organising teams. Zoe participated quietly, seeming to enjoy herself in a subdued way, particularly when paired with one of her 3 friends who had come. I caught Robert watching her with a mixture of pride and concern, stepping in occasionally to make sure she wasn't being overshadowed completely. It was during these first hours that I began noticing a troubling pattern with my family. My mother gravitated exclusively towards Sophia, commenting repeatedly on how grown-up she looked and reminiscing about previous birthdays. My sister Amanda spoke to Zoe briefly, but her questions were surface level, lacking the warmth and genuine interest she showed when talking to Sophia. My brother Tyler barely acknowledged Zoe at all, focusing his attention on teasing Sophia and catching up with James, who had come for part of the celebration, despite our divorce. The growing pile of presents on the designated gift table told its own story. The stack for Sophia grew impressively large, with contributions from family friends and even some of the parents who stayed for the party. In contrast, Zoe's pile contained only the gifts from Robert and me, one from each of her 3 friends, and a small package that had arrived by mail from Robert's sister in Colorado. The visual disparity was striking and increasingly uncomfortable. Robert caught my eye across the yard, his expression clearly communicating, "I told you so," without him having to say a word. I felt a knot forming in my stomach, but told myself we could address the imbalance later in private. The important thing now was to keep the party moving forward without drawing attention to the situation. As afternoon turned to early evening, we gathered everyone for cake and ice cream. I had ordered 2 separate cakes, chocolate raspberry for Sophia and vanilla, with buttercream for Zoe, each decorated according to their interests. When it came time to sing Happy Birthday, Sophia stood beaming at the centre of attention, while Zoe hung slightly back, her smile looking increasingly forced. "Let's sing for both birthday girls," I announced, trying to pull Zoe forward to stand beside Sophia. The resulting song was awkward, with most guests clearly focusing their attention and enthusiasm towards Sophia. I noticed several of my relatives barely mouthing the words when we substituted Zoe's name in the second round of singing. Zoe noticed too, I could tell by the way her shoulders hunched slightly inward, making herself physically smaller. Then came the moment I had been increasingly dreading as the party progressed, opening the gifts. We set up 2 chairs at the front of the gathering, one for each girl. Sophia dove into her pile with gusto, ripping paper and exclaiming loudly over each present. There were new clothes books, art supplies, gift cards, jewelry, and electronic gadgets. With each gift, she stood to give exuberant hugs to the givers, her happiness genuine and infectious. Beside her, Zoe opened her much smaller collection of presents with careful movements, neatly folding the wrapping paper instead of tearing it. She received art supplies from her friends, knowing her passion for drawing. The package from Robert's sister contained a beautiful handmade quilt with fabric squares that I later learned were made from some of Lisa's old clothes, a thoughtful connection to her mother that brought a genuine smile to Zoe's face. From us, she received the drawing tablet and art supplies, which she thanked us for with quiet sincerity. But as Sophia's gift opening continued for much longer, the contrast became painfully obvious to everyone. Not a single one of my family members had brought anything for Zoe. No small token, not even a card. I watched Zoe's expression become increasingly blank, that careful, neutral mask she wore when trying not to show hurt. Robert's face had darkened his jaw tight with barely contained anger. About halfway through Sophia's marathon gift session, I realized Zoe had slipped away from the circle. Looking around frantically, I couldn't spot her among the guests. I caught Robert's eye and he nodded toward the house, silently communicating that he had seen which way she went. I made a quick excuse about checking on refreshments and hurried inside. I found Zoe in her bedroom, sitting on the edge of her bed, silent tears streaming down her face. She wasn't sobbing or making any sound at all, which somehow made it worse, as if she had learned to grieve without disturbing anyone. When she saw me in the doorway, she quickly wiped her eyes and attempted to compose herself. "I'm sorry," she said, which broke my heart. "I just needed a minute. I'll come back out soon." I sat beside her on the bed, careful to leave a little space between us, still unsure, after 2 years, how much physical comfort she welcomed from me. "You have nothing to be sorry for," I told her. "I'm the one who should be apologizing. I noticed my family didn't bring you gifts, and that's not right." Zoe looked down at her hands. "It's okay. I don't need a lot of presents." "But it's your birthday too," I insisted. She was quiet for a moment before speaking in a voice so soft I had to lean in to hear her. "Sometimes I feel invisible in this family, like I'm just something extra that came along with Dad." She looked up at me with eyes so like Robert's. "Your family has never really seen me." "Not really." Her words hit me like a physical blow, because she was right. My family had never fully embraced Zoe as one of their own. They went through polite motions at holidays and gatherings, but there was always a distance, an invisible barrier that designated her as other. And worse, I had allowed it to happen, making excuses for their behavior instead of demanding better. "That ends today," I said, feeling a surge of protective anger rising in me. Not just at my family, but at myself for failing this child who had already lost so much. I returned to the backyard with a determination that must have shown on my face. Robert gave me a questioning look, and I nodded slightly to let him know I was handling the situation. Sophia was still in the middle of opening her presents, exclaiming over a new pair of wireless headphones from my brother. The contrast between her jubilation and Zoe's quiet pain fueled my resolve. Without fully thinking through the consequences, I stepped forward and said, "Let's take a quick break from opening gifts. I need to speak with family members for a moment." Sophia looked up in surprise and slight annoyance at being interrupted during her moment in the spotlight. "But Mom, I've still got like 10 more to open." "And you'll open them," I assured her. "Just give me a few minutes." I pulled my mother, sister, and brother aside, leading them into the kitchen where we could speak privately. Once the door swung shut behind us, I turned to face them, no longer bothering to mask my anger. "Would someone like to explain to me why not one of you brought a gift for Zoe?" I demanded. I specifically told everyone this was a joint party for both girls. My mother had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Well, Madeline, we just don't know the girl very well. We weren't sure what she would like." "You've known her for 2 years, Mum," I countered. "And even if that were true, you could have asked me, or brought a gift card, or literally anything to acknowledge her existence." "Come on, Maddie," my brother Tyler said with a dismissive wave. "Sophia is your actual daughter. Zoe is Robert's kid. It's not the same thing." His words crystallized everything that had been wrong with my family's attitude from the beginning. In their minds, Zoe would never be family, just an attachment to Robert that they reluctantly tolerated. "Zoe is my daughter now too," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "She lives in my home. I help her with homework, make her meals, comfort her when she's sad, celebrate when she succeeds. That makes her my child just as much as Sophia." My sister Amanda at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We didn't mean to hurt anyone's feelings. We can pick up something for her next time we visit." "She's hurting now," I said. "Do you have any idea what it feels like for a child to sit there watching everyone celebrate her stepsister while she's completely forgotten, especially a child who lost her mother at 8 years old?" The kitchen fell silent. I could see them processing my words perhaps for the first time, considering Zoe's perspective. But I also recognized the stubborn set of my mother's jaw, a family trait I'd unfortunately inherited that told me she wasn't going to readily admit any wrongdoing. In that moment, I made a decision that would have far-reaching consequences. "I'm going to fix this," I announced, then turned and walked back out to the party before they could respond. I returned to find Sophia eagerly reaching for another gift, while Zoe had come back outside, but was standing off to the side with Robert looking uncomfortable. Without hesitation, I walked over to the gift table and selected several of Sophia's unopened presents, the larger ones that were clearly from my family members. "Mum, what are you doing?" Sophia asked, her voice rising in confusion. "I'm evening things out," I replied, carrying the stack of presents over to Zoe. "These are for you." The entire party seemed to freeze. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, the sudden tension palpable in the air. Zoe looked mortified, her cheeks flushing red. "I don't understand," she said quietly. Robert stepped forward, his expression a mix of surprise and concern. "Madeline, what's happening? My family didn't bring gifts for Zoe," I explained loud enough for everyone to hear. "So I'm redistributing some of Sophia's presents to make things fair." Sophia's face transformed from confusion to shock to anger in the span of seconds. "You can't do that," she shouted. "Those are my presents. People brought them for me. And people should have brought presents for Zoe too," I countered, standing my ground, despite the growing horror I felt at the scene unfolding. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. "You're stealing my birthday presents on my birthday." "It's Zoe's birthday too," I reminded her. "But those are mine. You can't just take them." Sophia was fully crying now, her face red with anger and humiliation. Several of her friends looked on with wide eyes, while their parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. My family burst out of the kitchen door, having overheard the commotion. My mother rushed to Sophia's side, putting an arm around her shoulders protectively. "Madeline, have you lost your mind?" she demanded. "You cannot take gifts that people brought specifically for Sophia. Then someone should have thought to bring gifts for Zoe," I shot back. The party had completely derailed. Sophia tore herself away from my mother's embrace and ran into the house sobbing loudly. Several of her friends looked uncertainly at their parents, who began making awkward excuses about needing to leave. Zoe stood frozen in place, the stack of reassigned gifts untouched beside her, looking as if she wanted the ground to open up and swallow her. Robert moved to my side, speaking low enough that only I could hear. "I appreciate what you're trying to do, but this isn't the way to handle it." "What was I supposed to do?" I whispered back fiercely. "Let them treat her like she doesn't matter." "Not by hurting Sophia in the process," he replied, his expression troubled. I knew he was right, but I had gone too far to back down now. The damage was already done. Guests began leaving in a steady stream, murmuring awkward thanks and avoiding eye contact. My family members were openly furious, my mother declaring loudly that she needed to check on her poor granddaughter, while glaring daggers at me. My brother Tyler pulled me aside to tell me I had completely lost it, before storming out without saying goodbye. Within 30 minutes, the backyard was nearly empty, except for Robert, Zoe, and me. The half-eaten cakes, scattered gift wrap, and abandoned party games, stood as evidence of the celebration turned disaster. Zoe hadn't touched any of the gifts I'd tried to give her, maintaining that same stiff posture. "I didn't want those presents," she finally said, her voice barely audible. "I never asked for you to do that." "I know you didn't, sweetheart," I replied, the fight draining out of me as I realized how badly I had mishandled the situation. "I just couldn't stand to see you being treated unfairly." "But now Sophia hates me even more," she said, tears finally spilling over. And everyone saw what happened. It was humiliating. Robert put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "Let's go inside," he suggested gently. "This has been a difficult day for everyone." As we entered the house, I could hear Sophia's sobs from behind her closed bedroom door, where my mother was apparently still comforting her. The sound twisted my heart, making me question every decision I had made that day. I had tried to protect one daughter, only to devastate the other. Robert guided Zoe to her room, whispering something to her that I couldn't hear. When he returned to the living room, his expression was grave. "What you did came from a good place," he said carefully. "You wanted to stand up for Zoe, and I love you for that, but taking Sophia's gifts away in front of everyone was not the right solution. You humiliated both girls." His words stung because they were true. In my impulsive attempt to correct one injustice, I had created another. Now I had a stepdaughter who felt responsible for a ruined party and a daughter who felt betrayed by her own mother. I sank onto the couch, surrounded by the remnants of my failed attempt at creating the perfect blended family celebration. "I've made a terrible mess of everything," I admitted. "Yes," Robert agreed, simply sitting beside me. But messes can be cleaned up. It will take time and a lot of conversations, but we'll find a way forward. As I leaned against his shoulder, I heard my mother's footsteps on the stairs. She appeared in the living room doorway, her expression cold and disapproving. "Sophia doesn't want to speak to you," she announced. And frankly, I don't blame her. I've called James to come pick her up. She'll be staying with him tonight. Before I could respond, she collected her purse and left without another word, the front door closing with decisive finality behind her. The house fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the mantel, counting down the minutes of what had become the longest day of my life. The week following the birthday party disaster was the most difficult period in our blended family's short history. Sophia did indeed go to her father's house that night and refused to come home the next day. When I called James to discuss the situation, his fury was palpable, even through the phone. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice tight with anger. "You took birthday presents that were given to our daughter and tried to give them to your stepdaughter. What were you thinking, Madeline?" My family completely ignored Zoe. I tried to explain. "You should have seen her face, James. She was devastated." "So you decided to devastate our daughter instead," he countered. "Sophia is absolutely humiliated. She says you ruined her birthday, uninvited her friends by making everyone uncomfortable, and stole her presents in front of everyone she knows." "That's not exactly what happened," I protested, though I knew from Sophia's perspective it probably felt exactly that way. "She doesn't want to come back to your house right now," James continued. "And honestly, I don't blame her. I think she should stay with me for a while until she processes this." I wanted to argue to demand he send our daughter home, but the fight had drained out of me. "Can I at least talk to her?" "She doesn't want to speak to you, Ye," he replied. "Give her some time, Madeline. You really hurt her." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the wall, trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong. My phone buzzed continuously with texts and calls from family members, all expressing various levels of shock and disapproval at my actions. My sister sent a particularly stinging message, "Way to choose your new family over your real daughter." I turned my phone off after that, unable to bear any more criticism. At home, things weren't much better. Zoe moved through the house like a ghost, quiet and withdrawn. When I tried to talk to her about what happened, she responded with one-word answers before finding reasons to retreat to her room. The gifts I had attempted to redistribute remained untouched in a corner of the living room, a visual reminder of my misguided intervention. Robert tried to mediate, but I could tell he was torn. He appreciated my attempt to stand up for his daughter, but was troubled by my method and the resulting fallout. One evening, after another silent dinner where conversation felt forced and artificial, he found me sitting alone on the back porch. "Zoe feels responsible for what happened," he said, settling into the chair beside me. "She thinks she's the reason your family is falling apart." "Could they?" His words cut deep. "That's not true. This is all on me and my family's inability to truly welcome her." "Nevertheless, that's how she feels," he said. "And Sophia feels betrayed by you. No one is winning here, Madeline. I don't know how to fix this." I admitted the weight of failure pressing down on me. "We'll figure it out," he assured me, though I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. By midweek, the story had spread beyond our immediate family. I received a call from Sophia's school counsellor, expressing concern about her emotional state. "Sophia has been quite upset at school," the counsellor explained diplomatically. "She mentioned a difficult situation at her birthday party. I wanted to check in and see if there's anything we should be aware of, or if she might benefit from some additional support." I gave a sanitized version of events, mortified that my parenting failures were now being discussed in professional settings. The counsellor was kind but direct in her feedback. "Blended families face unique challenges," she acknowledged, "but children often interpret actions through a lens of their deepest fears. For a child of divorce, having a parent seemingly favour a step-sibling can trigger profound abandonment anxiety." Her words made me see the situation through Sophia's eyes in a way I hadn't fully considered. To Sophia, my actions weren't just about birthday presents. They represented choosing Zoe over her, confirming her worst fears about where she stood in our new family configuration. My phone call with my best friend Linda provided another perspective. Unlike my family, who were uniformly condemning Linda, listened to my full explanation without immediate judgment. "You were trying to protect a child who was being mistreated, she acknowledged. "That instinct came from a good place, but taking away Sophia's gifts was punishing her for something your family did." "I realize that now," I said miserably. "Your family was wrong not to bring Zoe gifts," Linda continued. "Absolutely wrong. but there were probably better ways to address it than in the middle of the party. Like what? I asked, genuinely wanting to know what I should have done differently. You could have spoken to your family privately, then supplemented Zoe's gifts yourself later. Or addressed it with them after the party and insisted on changes for the future. Or had separate celebrations knowing your family might pull something like this. She paused before adding gently, the biggest issue is that both girls ended up feeling terrible. Sophia feels betrayed by you, and Zoe feels responsible for family conflict. Neither of them deserved that. Her assessment was painfully accurate. In my clumsy attempt to create instant justice, I had created new injustices. Both girls were hurting, and the gulf between them had widened rather than narrowed. By Friday, 5 days after the party, I felt completely isolated. Sophia was still at her father's house. My family was barely speaking to me, and even Robert and Zoe seemed to be walking on eggshells around me. I had reached the end of my emotional rope when James called unexpectedly. Sophia has agreed to meet with you, he said without preamble. Tomorrow at 2 at the ice cream shop on Main Street. Just the two of you. I nearly wept with relief. Thank you, James. Thank you for arranging this. Don't thank me, he replied. This was her decision. She says she has things she wants to say to you. His tone suggested those things might not be pleasant to hear, but I was desperate for any opportunity to begin repairing the damage. I'll be there, I promised. As I hung up, I felt the first flicker of hope in days. Sophia was willing to talk. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless toward healing the rift my actions had created. The ice cream shop on Main Street had been a special place for Sophia and me since she was little. It was where we celebrated her first day of kindergarten, where we stopped after dance recitals, where we had serious mother-daughter talks when she was upset about friend drama or school struggles. Choosing this location for our meeting felt significant, a reminder of our history together, before everything became so complicated. I arrived 15 minutes early, too anxious to sit at home counting down the minutes. I selected a booth in the back corner, ordered Sophia's favourite mint chocolate chip in a waffle bowl, and waited with my stomach in knots. At exactly 2 o'clock, James's car pulled up outside. He remained behind the wheel as Sophia got out her expression unreadable as she entered the shop. She had always been a beautiful child with her father's blue eyes and my blonde hair, but in that moment she looked older somehow, as if the events of the past week had accelerated her journey toward adolescence. She spotted me and walked over, sliding into the booth without a greeting. I got your favourite, I said, pushing the ice cream toward her. She looked at it for a moment before picking up the spoon. Thanks, she said flatly. We sat in uncomfortable silence as she took a few bites. I wanted to fill the void with apologies and explanations, but forced myself to wait to let her set the pace for this conversation. Finally, she put down her spoon and looked directly at me. Dad says I should try to understand your side of things, that you were trying to be fair to Zoe. I acknowledged. But the way I did it was wrong and I hurt you in the process. I'm so sorry, Sophia. Her lower lip trembled slightly before she pressed her mouth into a firm line. You embarrassed me in front of all my friends. Everyone was talking about it at school. The thought of her facing gossip and questions from peers made me wince. I never meant for that to happen. I wasn't thinking clearly. You took away my birthday presents. She continued, her voice rising slightly. Presents that people brought for me. How could you do that? I was upset that Grandma and Uncle Tyler and Aunt Amanda didn't bring anything for Zoe, I explained. It seemed so unfair in the moment, and I reacted without thinking about how it would affect you. But they're my family, Sophia countered. Of course they brought me presents. They always have. They're supposed to be Zoe's family now too, I said gently. Sophia stirred her melting ice cream, not meeting my eyes. It's not the same though, is it? She's not really my sister, and Robert's not really my dad. Her words revealed the heart of the matter, the fundamental disconnect in how we viewed our blended family. In my eagerness to create a unified family, I had glossed over Sophia's feelings about sharing her mother and her extended family with people she hadn't chosen to bring into her life. No, Robert isn't replacing your dad. I agreed. You have your dad and he loves you very much, but Robert cares about you too in his own way. And Zoe isn't trying to be your sister if that's not what you want. But she is a child in the same house, trying to find her place just like you are. Sophia was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller, more vulnerable than before. Sometimes I feel like you love her more than me now, like I'm not enough anymore, so you needed another daughter. Her words struck me like a physical blow. Oh, Sophia, no, that is absolutely not true. I could never love anyone the way I love you. You're my daughter, my first baby. That bond can never be replaced or diminished. Then why did you take my presents and try to give them to her? She asked, a tear sliding down her cheek. It felt like you were picking her over me. I reached across the table and took her hand, relieved when she didn't pull away. I was trying to correct what I saw as an injustice, but I did it all wrong. I ended up hurting you, which is the last thing I ever want to do. The presents weren't just things to you, were they? They represented how much people care about you. She nodded, wiping her eyes with her free hand. And when you took them, it felt like you were taking that away too. The realization of how deeply I had misunderstood the situation hit me full force. In my focus on the material inequality, I had missed the emotional significance of those gifts, especially to a child navigating the complex aftermath of her parents' divorce and mother's remarriage. I am so sorry, I said, my own eyes filling with tears. I made a terrible mistake and there's no excuse for it. All I can do is ask for your forgiveness and promise to do better. Sophia looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed, a sound too weary for a 12-year-old. Dad says I have to come home tomorrow. He has a business trip. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. We'll take things one day at a time, I assured her, and your presents will be waiting for you untouched. She nodded, then surprised me by asking, "How's Zoe? Is she mad at me?" "No, not at all," I said quickly. "If anything, she feels terrible about what happened. She never wanted any of this." "It wasn't her fault," Sophia admitted grudgingly. "She didn't ask you to take my stuff." "No, she didn't," I agreed. "That was all my doing." We finished our ice cream in a silence that felt marginally more comfortable than when we began. As we prepared to leave, Sophia asked hesitantly, "Can Dad drive me to the house to get some more of my things for tomorrow?" "Of course," I said. "And maybe while you're there, we could all talk, the four of us, try to figure out how to move forward." She considered this, then nodded. "I guess we could try." It was a small victory, but I clung to it desperately as we walked out to James's waiting car. The road ahead would be difficult, but at least Sophia was willing to take the first steps with me. When we arrived home, I was surprised to find Robert and Zoe sitting at the kitchen table with the pile of contested gifts between them. They looked up as we entered, both of their expressions cautious. "We've been talking," Robert said, standing to greet us. "And Zoe has something she'd like to say." Zoe stood nervously, tucking her hair behind her ears. "I want to give back the presents," she said, addressing Sophia directly. "They were meant for you, and I never wanted to take them." "They're still all wrapped," Sophia observed, looking at the untouched pile. "I didn't open them," Zoe confirmed. "They're yours." The simple gesture seemed to ease some of the tension in Sophia's shoulders. "Thanks," she said awkwardly. Robert suggested we move to the living room where we could all sit more comfortably. Once settled, he looked at each of us in turn. "I think we need to have an honest conversation about how we're functioning as a family. Clearly, what we've been doing isn't working for everyone." "I'm sorry for how I handled things at the party," I began. "I should never have put either of you girls in that position. And I'm sorry my mum and aunt and uncle didn't bring you gifts," Sophia said to Zoe, surprising me with her maturity. "That wasn't fair," Zoe shrugged. "It's okay, I'm used to it." "But you shouldn't have to be," Robert interjected gently. "That's part of the problem." We spent the next hour talking more openly than we ever had before. Sophia expressed her feelings of displacement since our remarriage, her sense that she was losing pieces of her life and family. Zoe shared her ongoing grief for her mother and her struggle to find her place in a new family system where she often felt like an outsider. Robert and I listened occasionally, offering perspective, but mostly just creating space for the girls to voice their true feelings. By the end of the conversation, we had made some concrete decisions. We would try family therapy to help us navigate the challenges of blending our lives. We would have separate birthday celebrations next year, removing the pressure of forced togetherness for that particular occasion. And most importantly, I would have a serious conversation with my family about their treatment of Zoe, making it clear that respecting her as part of our family was non-negotiable. "Do you think we can ever be like a real family?" Zoe asked, as our discussion wound down, her question hanging in the air between us. "We already are a real family," Robert replied. "Just not a traditional one. We're finding our own way." Sophia considered this. "I guess there's no rule book for how this is supposed to work, is there?" "No," I agreed. "We're writing it as we go along. And we'll make mistakes like I did at the party, but what matters is that we keep trying to do better." As we ordered pizza for dinner that night, the atmosphere in the house felt different. Not magically healed, certainly, but perhaps more honest. We had confronted some hard truths and survived. It was a beginning, a small step toward the family harmony I had so desperately tried to manufacture at the birthday party, but which I now understood could only grow organically over time, with patience and understanding. 6 months after the birthday party disaster, our family looks quite different than it did before. The changes aren't dramatic or easily visible to outsiders, but they run deep beneath the surface of our daily interactions. Family therapy has become a regular part of our schedule, providing a safe space for all of us to express feelings and work through conflicts with professional guidance. Dr. Levine, our therapist, has a gentle but direct approach that helps us identify patterns and find healthier ways to communicate. One of the most difficult conversations I've ever had was with my mother about 3 weeks after the party incident. We met for coffee at a neutral location away from both our homes, which somehow made it easier to speak candidly. "I need you to understand something," I told her after we had exchanged awkward pleasantries. "Zoe is my daughter now. Not biologically, not legally through adoption, but in all the ways that matter in day-to-day life. When you exclude her or treat her as less than Sophia, you're telling me that my chosen family isn't valid in your eyes." My mother stirred her coffee, her expression carefully composed. "You can't expect us to feel the same way about a child we've only known for 2 years as we do about Sophia, who we've loved since birth." "I don't expect equal feelings," I clarified. "I expect equal treatment. I expect you to make an effort to know Zoe, to include her, to show her basic kindness and consideration." "We've been kind to the girl," my mother protested. "Kindness isn't just absence of cruelty, Mom. It's active inclusion. It's bringing her a birthday present when you bring one for Sophia. It's asking about her interests and activities, not just Sophia's. It's helping her feel like she belongs in this family." My mother was silent for a long moment. "I suppose we could do better," she finally admitted, though I could tell the concession didn't come easily to her. "I need you to do better," I said firmly, "because I won't allow Zoe to feel like an outsider in her own extended family anymore. If that means we need to limit our family gatherings or create different boundaries, that's what we'll do." The conversation didn't magically transform my mother's attitude, but it did establish a new baseline for what I would and wouldn't accept. Similar conversations with my sister and brother yielded mixed results. Amanda has made genuine efforts to connect with Zoe recently, taking her shopping for art supplies and showing interest in her drawings. Tyler remains more distant, though he did remember to send a card for Zoe's half-birthday, a small gesture that nonetheless represented progress. Within our immediate household, the dynamics between Sophia and Zoe have evolved in unexpected ways. They haven't become instant best friends or surrogate sisters, but a cautious respect has developed between them. I noticed it first when Sophia defended Zoe to one of her friends, who made a dismissive comment about her weird stepkid. Later that week, Zoe helped Sophia with a challenging art project for school without being asked. Small moments, but significant ones in the context of our earlier struggles. Robert and I have grown stronger through this crisis, finding our way to a united parenting approach that respects both our children's needs while maintaining appropriate boundaries. We check in regularly, discussing issues before they escalate, and supporting each other through difficult parenting moments. Our marriage feels more grounded now, based on a realistic understanding of the challenges we face, rather than my earlier fantasy of perfect family integration. As the girls' next birthdays approach, we've been carefully planning separate celebrations. Sophia will have a sleepover with her closest friends on her actual birthday, followed by a small family dinner, where both sides of the family have been explicitly instructed about gift expectations. Zoe has requested a much smaller gathering and art workshop with just 3 friends, followed by dinner at her favourite restaurant. Both girls seem relieved by the separate arrangements, free from the pressure of sharing what is ultimately a very personal celebration. My understanding of what it means to be a mother has deepened tremendously through this experience. I've learned that being a mother to both a biological child and a stepchild requires different approaches, acknowledging the unique relationships while ensuring both children feel secure and valued. With Sophia, I'm rebuilding trust that was damaged by my impulsive actions at the party. With Zoe, I'm continuing to build a relationship that honors her connection to her mother's memory while creating our own special bond. Perhaps the most important lesson I've learned is about the nature of fairness. I used to think fairness meant identical treatment, the same gifts, the same attention, the same rules. Now I understand that true fairness means meeting each child where they are recognizing their individual needs and histories and responding accordingly. Sometimes that means Sophia gets more time with me when she's struggling with school or friend issues. Sometimes it means Zoe gets extra attention around holidays or anniversaries that trigger grief about her mother. It's not about mathematical equality, but about emotional equity. Building a blended family is not the straightforward process I naively imagined when Robert and I married. It's a complex, sometimes painful journey of integration that happens in tiny increments over years, not in grand gestures or perfectly orchestrated events like joint birthday parties. It requires patience, flexibility, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves and our expectations. Last week, I overheard a conversation between the girls that gave me hope we're on the right track. They were sitting in the backyard working on separate activities, but sharing the same space when Sophia asked, "Do you ever wonder what it would be like if your mum was still alive? Would we ever have met?" Zoe was quiet for a moment before answering. "I think about that a lot. I miss my mum every day, but then I wouldn't know you or Madeline. It's complicated." "Yeah," Sophia agreed. "I used to wish my parents would get back together, but then your dad wouldn't be in our lives. I guess we can't go backward, only forward." "Forward works," Zoe said. "Even when it's weird." "Especially when it's weird," Sophia replied with a small laugh. Their simple wisdom brought tears to my eyes. Forward is indeed the only direction available to us, even when the path is unclear and strewn with obstacles. 6 months after the birthday party that exposed all our family fault lines, we're moving forward together imperfectly, but intentionally, creating a new kind of family that has room for all our complicated histories and relationships. If there's one thing I've learnt through this journey, it's that love isn't a finite resource that gets depleted when shared. There's enough for both my daughters, different in nature, but equal in strength. It just took a painful lesson for me to understand how to express that love in ways that truly serve each child's needs. Has your family gone through a similar transition? How did you handle birthdays or holidays in your blended family? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might be navigating these same challenging waters. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that in the messy journey of blending families, progress matters more than perfection.